Okay, it looks like we are live. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome back if you've been tuning in into our Beyond the Solar series. Essentially, what this series was created for, it was designed to empower you to correctly power your home, right? We want to give the utility companies the good news, let them know like, hey, our relationship is done. The whole point of this is to utilize solar in order to protect your family from the rising cost of electricity and be able to give not only yourself but your family a fighting chance on making yourself independent, not having to be subject to the utility companies, and then obviously making sure that you're creating a better and brighter future for your family. Now, for our Beyond the Solar series, we also want to take into account everyday things, right? One of the things that I love, well, one of the few things that I love is I love freedom, right? That's why I got into solar. I love that what solar allows me to do allows me to work from anywhere in the world. It allows me to meet a group of many individuals. It allows me to connect with people in a unique way, and it allows me to control how much money I can bring in that I can then use to support my family. If you don't know by now, my name is Will Zapata. I've had the pleasure of being in the solar industry for just about a decade. I've been able to help families transition over into renewable power all over the country. So I've worked in California, Texas, Florida, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and this has been an incredible experience for me because I get to meet with a lot of different families, but at the core fundamental, regardless of whether you've never heard about solar or you've looked into solar, 10 plus times, what everybody wants is a clear understanding as to how it can work. And what everybody is working towards is creating independence for themselves and their family. Now, in our Beyond the Solar series, we also want to be able to dive into things that are just deeper than renewable energy, deeper than solar, and we want to be able to empower and brighten ourselves. One of the things that I love talking about is fatherhood. I've had the pleasure of being the father to two beautiful children, right? My daughter being 2.5 years old, my son being a 5 month old. And I love the idea of being able to provide a path that my kids and even other people can follow, right? That at least can give them some guidelines as to how they can live a more prosperous life. And I don't mean just prosperous financially, I mean being able to find something that you love, being able to find something that challenges you, being able to find something that gives you purpose, and then being able to do what we were put on this planet to do, which is help and serve other people. So for today, what we want to be able to go over is the lessons that my kids have taught me about leadership. We want to take the opportunity to reflect on how being a parent has also cultivated the skills that we needed in order for us to be able to be leaders in our business, be leaders in our communities, and be leaders in our families, right? So I encourage everybody to please leave lots of comments, please leave lots of notes, interact as much as you can because this series is really designed to help us be better every single day. It's designed to give us the tools that we need in order to make sure that we're living the best lives that we can live, and also to make sure that we are giving our children the tools that they need in order for them to be successful. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to give us a like, make sure to give us a follow on our platforms, and please be sure to, send out any questions that you might have or any other topics that you want us to talk about. In the Beyond the Solar series, we want to dive into freedom, we want to dive into fatherhood, we want to dive into financial independence, we want to dive into, physical exercise, all the things that help us be well rounded, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not just looking at our bank account. We want to make sure we're looking at our emotional account, our spiritual account, our mental account, so that way we can be the best version of ourselves that we can be, not for us, right? But actually for our families, for our spouses, for our partners. And that way, we can make sure that we're living a life that is actually driven and guided by purpose. So, With that being said, let's dive in. Let's see. Let's go into the topics that we're going to talk about, which is again how my kids has taught me how to be a better leader, right? How to cultivate and how to work better with my team. And I want to be able to bring and share those lessons with you guys as well. So the first part that we're going to go into is how powerful it is to be patient, right? If you guys are parents, I'm sure that you know this. You might even know this better than me, but it is incredibly important for you to be able to have patience in your life, right? You want to make sure that whatever situation is coming up, you're able to properly assess what that situation looks like. You want to be able to look at it from many different angles, right? You want to be able to, get a bird's eye view, look at it from above, below. I always say, right, that I always try to not just look at the tree that's right in front of me, but let's take a look at the entire forest that is in front of me, right? Because what you could be seeing in front of you may not be the entire story. And being able to be a father and have patience, right? That is going to be completely translated into what you do in your business, maybe what you do in your job, how you interact with your partner. It's going to be very important. And let me tell you, kids are going to test your patience. That is what they do, right? I can tell you, I'm having the pleasure of dealing again with a newborn. My son is 5 months old, right? And sometimes it's like I have to understand in what language does he communicate, right? We are all different and unique individuals, right? So some of us might be really good at understanding things if we hear it once. Sometimes we have to hear it multiple times. Sometimes we have to like have a picture drawn for us. Sometimes it's like, okay, I need to like try it myself in order for me to understand, right? But overall, we have to understand that everybody has their own unique way that they want to be spoken to, that they want to be understood. If you guys are familiar, you've probably heard of this book called which is the Four Love Languages, right? And the reason why that is because everybody's going to speak a different language, and somebody may not understand the language that's even comfortable for you, right? So just to give you guys some examples, maybe you're somebody that is much more understanding through physical touches, right? And that's just the way that you learn. That's like your love language. That's how you operate. Well, just because you're somebody that operates in that manner, it doesn't mean that the person that you're speaking with operates in that same manner. It's just as important for you to be able to understand how you are able to receive information, that we understand how are other people receiving that information. And let me tell you, both of my children, just like people in general, they're very different, right? I don't talk to my daughter in the same way that I, talk to my son, My son, it's a little bit more physical actions. He may not understand the language so far. My daughter, she understands a little bit better the language, right? But and I'm sure a lot of dads understand this. My daughter has an attitude. Yes, even at 2.5 years old, my daughter has an attitude, and I can't fault her because my mom says I had that same attitude. But speaking to my daughter, I have to understand that one, I'm not going to understand everything that she says, right? Just because she's also learning the language. So I have to understand that when I am talking to her, I have to speak to her slowly. I have to, get on her level to understand what she's saying. I have to actually listen to what is being said or what is being, gestured, right? For me to understand exactly what her needs are. I had a funny story about, my son, right? My son, especially now that he's teething, he can be extremely fussy, right? And there was a moment where I had no idea, like, what his problem was. My son was just crying and crying, and he was just throwing a fit. He was not cooperating. I was trying to basically, feed him. That didn't work. I checked if his diaper needed to get changed. He was fine, right? I tried patting him. I tried so many things, right? But one of the things that I didn't do was I didn't lose patience, or I didn't yell at him, or tell him like, "Oh, why can't you just be quiet?" Right? Or blame my child. What I simply did is I have to understand, well, okay, if my child is panicking, it's probably not the smartest idea for me to go ahead and panic alongside with him, right? I should be the one to remain calm. I got to understand, well, he's a child. He can't express himself in words the way that I would understand. about what his needs are, right? I need to make sure that I can figure out what is it that's causing him some discomfort. And lo and behold, what it was is he had a gas trapped in him. I didn't get it the first time. I had to pat him in a few different ways. But once that happened, he was feeling so much better, and I was able to continue to feed him. Now, if I had, either gotten too nervous, if I had, maybe even yelled, if I had ignored him, that probably wouldn't be the right things to show my children, right? At the end of the day, we have to be able to showcase the patience that we want to see from our children that they should also expect from us, right? I'm a big believer that your kids are going to mimic what you do, and you want to take the opportunity to go ahead and get some patience. You want to be able to, take the time to listen. You want to be able to gain an understanding as to what is it that make your kids tick. It's going to be different for everybody, right? My child is probably not going to react the same way as somebody else's, right? My 5 month old is probably not going to be the same as somebody else's. But that's what's so great about being a parent, right? Is that you yourself, you have a unique understanding, you speak a unique language to your child, right? And you both have a way that you can communicate with one another that you're both going to be able to find some semblance of understanding. Now, depending on how old your children is, this is going to vary, right? Because if my child was, let's just say 10 or 15, I may have to have a way different approach than somebody that's dealing with a 5 month old, right? I'm probably going to have to take it differently. Even the way that I speak to my 5 month old, I have to speak to my 2.5 year old daughter just a little bit differently because they're at different processes in their development, right? If you have some teenagers, maybe you actually have to have a more grown adult conversation, right? That maybe for some of the parents to actually give me some insight on, right? Especially when I'm dealing with the baby girl, and then I have my son, right? I know they can be completely different. I've heard stories of, certain parents will tell me daughters are difficult to deal with, right? They want to be more independent. Sometimes, they think they're a little bit more grown, right? But sometimes maybe boys are a little bit different. Maybe boys give attitude. Those are all things that I'm actually looking forward to learning, right? I want to be able to understand what is the proper method in order for me to speak with my children, right? And what's the best way that I can have an engaging conversation with them. Now, using that, I'm going to translate that over into leadership, right? Because people on my team, they're going to speak and operate in different ways. And that's where, whenever I'm speaking to one of my teammates, I have to understand, okay, well, what is the way that they communicate, right? What is the way that they like to be communicated to, right? Do they understand the way that I communicate? Do they understand the way that I receive information? And that's very important for you to know as a leader, because at the end of the day, right, humans are not going nowhere. No matter what happens, I don't see us getting replaced by, the robot invasion anytime soon. And the best way for us to be able to get ahead in life is to be able to properly communicate with other humans, right? I gave you guys the example of the four love languages. If you have people on your team, it's very important that you have these kind of conversations with them. Understand what is it that makes them tick, right? Understand what's the way that they like to be spoken to, right? Maybe understand what their love language is, so that way that can make you an effective leader. I've had people on my team that I can be brutal with them. I can tell them, hey, man, your performance isn't all that well right now. I think you're doing a terrible job. I know that you're way better than this. I've seen what you've done before, and I think that you could be doing way better. Like, what's going on? Right? But then there's been people on my team that I can't approach them that way, right? Because maybe they're a little bit more sensitive. Maybe they have stuff going on in their life. But I got to see a way that I can actually talk to them that's going to get the message across, right? Because at the end of the day, whether it's business, whether it's parenting, whether it's leadership, it's all about communication and being able to have a proper dialogue with the people on your team. And if you want to be in business, if you want to be a leader, whether again that's in your household, whether that's in your business, whether that's in your place of work, you want to make sure that you're carrying yourself with the right leadership skills. That way you can further communicate and be more effective at reaching your goals, right? Again, going back to it, right? Staying calm, having patience is super important when it comes to business. Just like with children, things are going to come up that you don't expect. I'll give you guys a great example that happened to me today. For the first time, my son fell off the bed. I can't tell you. how scared, how nervous I was. I was I was a wreck for a little bit, right? Me and my partner, we were a wreck for a little bit because the first time, everything was fine. My son was good. We still took him to the hospital to make sure that everything was okay. And then when I got home, some of our systems were down, right? So uh, and I couldn't make my outbound call. But what did I do? Instead of panicking, instead of just throwing in the towel, instead of getting frustrated with my partner, I simply understood, hey, mistakes are going to happen. Things that we don't expect will happen. So what we have to do is we just have to take everything with a sense of calm, and then just understand, okay, what is the most important thing that I can do at this moment that's going to get me the results. When it came to my son, we made sure to check him. I undressed him to make sure he didn't have no harm, he didn't have no bruises. What was the second thing? Hey, let's just make an appointment with the hospital. Better safe than sorry. Hey, when my systems were down, I couldn't make outbound calls. Well, luckily we have backup, right? Made calls from my phone. Maybe I sent some text messages. Maybe I was able to manage some projects, right? All things that if I was quickly to just lose control, if I was quickly to lose my patience, I wouldn't be able to see it, and it wouldn't allow me to be as productive as I could have been or as I should have been, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, the second point, right, is that how to have humility and own up to your mistakes, right? Listen, we're all humans. We are going to make a ton of mistakes. Nobody in this world is perfect. And just like you understand that you're not perfect means your child is not going to be perfect, right? So that's where having the patience, right? And then also being able to be humble enough to understand that taking accountability for the mistakes that you make as a parent, as a leader, as a teammate, it's going to be very important, right? Because we understand that real leaders, they don't, try to pass the blame to somebody else. They actually take ownership for whatever happened, even if they didn't happen, right? I have a quick story when it came to with my daughter is she's doing like bicycle motocross for a lack of a better term, right? And like I said, my daughter already has her own little attitude, and she not too long ago ended up falling right on her bicycle, and she wanted to scream and cry, which she did. But one of the things that I had an opportunity to speak with her is to tell her like, hey, baby girl, well, you understand that it's so important for you to look ahead of you. You can't be looking sideways, right? You got to make sure that you look ahead of you. It wasn't nothing serious, but she's learning that, right? She's learning that, hey, like things happen, you're gonna fall. Understand that you're not perfect, you're gonna make mistakes, but what's important is you understanding, hey, where did I make that mistake? Owning up to it and then moving forward. Same thing that's happened to me in business. I've made a ton of mistakes in business. I can tell you that there are a lot of things that I've done that I shouldn't have done, and there are things that I shouldn't done that I should be doing, right? Um, and what you can do is essentially, hey, as a leader, take responsibility for it, right? Don't go ahead and try to blame somebody else on your team, or don't go ahead and try to, not take accountability for it, because that's not strong leadership, right? When people look at a leader, people want to look at someone that is aware that they've made mistakes. They want to look at people that understand that, hey, they're not perfect. They want to work with people that if they do make a mistake, they're going to own it, and they're going to be right there to go ahead and work through it, right? As a parent, you're going to do the same thing. We don't want to put blame on our children, right? We want to help them understand where they went wrong or where they miscalculated, and understand that, hey, mistakes happen. How do we, correct it for the next time? And how do we avoid doing that same mistake again? Because that's the whole point of us, living life. It's the whole point of us being humans, is understanding that we are going to make mistakes. It's understanding that, hey, not everything is going to be perfect. It's understanding that things will be tough. And because of that, you're able to humble yourself and understand that in other people, right? Me, myself, with my team, I understand that when something goes wrong, I quickly look at, okay, well, what didn't I do to prevent that? What could I do next time to prevent that? How can I properly train? How can I make sure that I get the message across? Right? And also, how do I make sure that they understood me when I delivered that message? Maybe I did deliver that message, but maybe I just couldn't get my point across correctly. All those things are going to be super important when it comes to being able to properly, engage with your children, engage with your team, being able to, have these kind of conversations that allow us that we create the right kind of simulation or the right kind of attitude that our kids are going to want to emulate. Because at the end of the day, kids are watching everything that we do. The last thing that we want to do is not be is not be effective as parents, right? We're not perfect. We understand that, right? But we don't want to go ahead and create an environment where our children are afraid to make mistakes, where our children are afraid to come to us, where our children, they don't want us to be around them because they think that they're going to be judged severely. So, all things that are important, right? Remember, humble yourself. You're human. Have some patience. Understand we're going to make mistakes and keep moving forward, right? Third point, lead by example. Now, this one is very, very important. I think that this one is probably one of the most important things that we can do because, especially when your kids are young, they're sponges, man. They're going to absorb everything that you do, they're going to mimic everything that you do. And it's so important to make sure that you're leading by example. One of the things that I do in my household is that around my children, I will do my best to spend as little time as possible on my phones. I'm not a fan of screen time. I don't like it. We hardly watch television. We'll usually wait until our children are asleep. If my partner and I, if we're gonna, maybe just have a movie night, which is at home, right? Part of the financial lesson. But if we're gonna have some time, right, we do our best to make sure that we're present, that we're engaged with our children. We do a great job at not being on our phones or watching television. Why? Because then that's exactly what our children are going to want to do all the time. One of the things that I did right away when I knew that my children was coming is, hey, I said I gotta read more. Right now, I love to read. I'm an avid reader. I'd love to be able to show you guys my book collection one day. But I love to read, right? And I will read mostly anything I can get my hands on, especially if I'm interested, right? Sometimes I have my things that I like to read for entertainment, like mangas or comic books. I like my conspiracy theory books. I like my books about relationships and psychology. I will, try to read anything I can. But the reason why I decided to, pick up on how much I was reading was because having my children around me, I wanted them to see that. I didn't want them to see their dad just being on the phones aimlessly, just scrolling aimlessly, right? I didn't want my children to see me not being engaged with them. I didn't want my children to see me like missing all the wonderful things that's happened around me because I'm too stuck to a screen, right? And then what happens? Well, then they start to look at that and they think that that's okay. And then before we know it, we have a whole bunch of iPad babies. Not knocking it, I understand, right? We as parents, we got to do what we got to do. I understand that we are not perfect. I understand that as parents, we're going to make a ton of mistakes. But it's so important for you to be able to again try your best to show the right example for your children. Now let's follow that into your team, right? If you're a leader, if you own a business, your teammates are going to do what they see you doing, right? So if they see you coming in and you're slacking off or you're not being as productive as you could be, well, what does that mean? Your team is going to do the same thing, right? Your team is only going to be able to work as hard as they see you work. That's why when I'm in go mode, I am completely in go mode. I like to be the first one in, the last one out, because I want to show my team that I'm here for the long haul, right? I'm willing to put in the hard work. I'm willing to put in the long hours. I'm willing to go through the trials and tribulations in order to create something that's going to provide a great opportunity, not just for me, not just for my family, but everybody else that joins my team as well. Because at the end of the day, guys, we're a unit, right? No business happens on its own. We need to learn how to work with other people. We need to be able to do well with other people. We need to be able to do well by other people, right? And we need to be able to make sure that we're creating the image that we want to see, right? We can't be the ones that are lackadaisical. We can't be the ones that are improper. We can't be the ones that are not working effectively and then expect to have an effective and efficient team, right? Everybody is going to follow what you do, so you want to make sure that you're leading by example, right? When it comes to my kids, for the most part, again, my daughter's the one that has a little bit of attitude. I do my best to, not raise my voice at her. Luckily, I haven't had to do that. Not looking forward to do it either, but hey, You never know. I am Hispanic, so we can get loud. But even with my teammates, right? I want to show them like, hey, we have a strong work ethic. We have a great attitude. We're ethical. We're doing the right thing. We're just not doing something just because we're trying to make a buck or make a sale. It's very important that we understand that we're in this for the long haul, and we're looking to create deep and long-lasting relationships, right? So, leadership is contagious, right? You want to make sure that you be the example that you want to have repeated. Humble yourself, understand you're going to make mistakes, your team's going to make mistakes, own it, learn from it, and move forward. Have patience. Patience is incredibly powerful, especially in a day and age where we're so accustomed to instant gratification. So make sure that you have the patience in order to look at the entire picture that's painted in front of you, right? The next point, we are moving on good here, man. Thank you so much for everybody that was able to share this. I really do appreciate it. It's actually what motivated me. I felt like that helped me get just more excited about presenting this. Is, being present over perfection, right? Like, again, this is why I mentioned, not being on my phone so much, especially when I'm around my children. It's because you miss things, right? And I've had to ask for an apology from my children because there were moments where I missed on little things that my son or daughter were doing because I was on my phone, right? And I should have put that down. And it's much more important for us to be present, even if you can't be there all the time. Listen, I understand we have extremely busy schedules. If you're a business owner, if you're a hardworking person, if maybe you're in other events that's outside of business and work, maybe it's church, maybe it's for the community, you're going to be busy. And kids, from what I can see, they don't want all of your time. They just want some of your time. And when they do have your time, they want you to be present. When I'm talking to my baby girl, yo, that is the only thing that I'm paying attention to. Nothing else matters. Everything shuts down in my mind, and that's the only thing I'm paying attention to. When I'm with my son, changing him, he's finally learning how to get some food now. We just introduced him to mango. We just introduced him to squash, so that was really exciting. But that's what I'm paying attention to, right? Even people on your team, right? People don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. Are you there to help them when they are in a difficult situation? Are you there to, ask the right questions that can maybe bring out what are some of their concerns? Are you aware of like the changes that's happening around them? Are you present enough to understand what's happening in their personal life? Because at the end of the day, we are human beings. We're not human doings, right? I know that we've been, accustomed to a certain lifestyle when it comes to work. I'm a big proponent of breaking the mold in the way that we work. I love freedom. I want to share freedom with everybody else. I don't like the monotony of doing the same thing all the time, right? But you got to understand that you got to be present with your team, right? When you're working, you're working. When you're relaxing, you're relaxing. Understand that leadership is about showing up physically, emotionally, and mentally, right? You want to be there. You want to make sure that you're focused on what's happening, how is your team feeling, what are some of the struggles that they're going through, because that's going to make you a more effective leader, right? And nobody cares until you show them how much you care about them, right? It's very important to do that. As a leader, you're probably going to be walking away with a lot of disappointment. You're going to be walking away with a lot of struggles, but that's why you decided to be a leader, because you were somebody that understood the path that you were walking down, and you had the strength and I call it the calluses of life to be able to withstand that. So definitely keep that in mind. And for the last point, right, is legacy thinking, right? This is probably one of the greatest things that I can definitely, show my children, is how to have a long-term approach to anything, right? Like, how do you want your children to be when they grow up? And going back to the example I gave you guys, why I started to pick up books. One, I didn't want to be on my phone so much. I didn't want my children to see me on my phone so much. But I also wanted my children to see that, hey, their father is somebody who's always learning. Their father is somebody that owns up to his mistakes, right? Their father is somebody that's ethical, right? One of the greatest things that I told my partner that we can teach our children is how teach them how they can be virtuous, how they can be brave, right? How they can do the right thing when maybe everybody around them is doing all the wrong thing. How to teach them how they can do the hard thing when everybody around them tells them to do the difficult thing, right? To teach them like, hey, what is the integral way that you want to live, right? You don't want to show them that you're lying, that you're stealing, that you're cheating to get ahead, right? You want to show them that, hey, Mom and dad have to do whatever they need to do in order to get ahead, as long as it's ethical and and as long as it's ethical, righteous, and lawful, right? You want to show them that, hey, you have a culture of understanding other people, of understanding other situations, and you want to give them values that are going to last, right? That's why in this series, the Beyond the Solar series, we talk about freedom, right? We talk about financial freedom, we talk about physical freedom, we talk about mental and spiritual freedom, right? Because at the end of the day, we were put on this planet by our Creator to do and provide an incredible service for our fellow human beings. And you want to be able to showcase that to your children. I always say, right, that it doesn't matter what you leave your kids behind materialistically, but what truly matters is that you can empower your children, that they have the skill set and they have the tools necessary for them to be successful no matter in what times they live in. Doesn't matter what's going on, right? Doesn't matter what craziness is happening in the market or what's happening in your country, right? Whatever it is that you can withstand, you want to make sure that your children have the tools and the values to be able to carry them up, right? You want to make sure that you're teaching them the right thing. And this goes into leadership, right? One of the things that I talk about to my team is learn how to live on less, right? Sure, you're making money right now, but you never know. Things can change, businesses shut down, they open up, they shut down, it happens. It's a cycle. Obviously, I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from my business and my team, right? But the best way that you can build a good insulation for yourself is to make sure that you have a long term view on things. When it comes to business, I like to be extremely conservative, right? I like to think about, okay, well, how can I operate at the lowest possible cost while adding the most amount of value, right? And then I always like to think, well, how are things going to change? Because it's one thing that we know for sure is that nothing is constant. How are things going to be changing? How do you properly adapt, right? What are some new technologies that are coming your way? And overall, how long do you want to be in business? And I don't mean just you. I mean, what kind of legacy do you want to create or do you want to leave behind for your children and your grandchildren, your great grandchildren? One of my goals that I have is that I want to be so impactful, right? That I can have, my great grandchildren reading about me, right? Where I can leave behind what my stories were in my journal, that I can be an inspiration to my children of the future, right? So then that way they can look to me and look to my mistakes to understand, maybe for some guidance in their lives. That's one of the things that I, look forward to when it comes to creating a legacy. Creating a legacy is not about just leaving them behind, money or, wealth or materialism. Those are all good. Hey, I do not knock it, right? But you want to make sure that the children that you are leaving behind, right, that they have the right tools, they have the right mindset, and most importantly, they have the right values that then they can carry on, right? Because remember, you know, life is not forever, right? We won't live in eternity. I know it seems like with technology we might be able to live longer, and I think that's true. But that's all the more the reason why we want to be able to work harder to be able to provide a legacy that our kids can follow, right? Work harder that we can be the example that we want them to be. Have the patience to understand that we're all human, right? And be humble enough to understand that nobody's greater and nobody's lesser than any other human being on this planet. So, quick recap, right, team? Thank you so much again for being with me. Remember, patience, humility, lead by example, be present, and work on creating a legacy, right? Nothing happens overnight. I know in today's, day and age, we feel like things happen so fast, right? But nothing happens overnight. So make sure that you give yourself the opportunity to learn and grow as a person, be able to share what you know with other people, and then be the example that you want to see in the world, right? You can't complain about whatever's happening in the world or happening in the community if you're not willing to be the change that you want to see. So this has been an incredible opportunity to provide this lesson. I love being a father. If you're a parent out there, I hope that you can enjoy it as well. There is no greater feeling, there is no greater gift than being able to, be a father and bring life into, or be a parent, should I say, and bring life into this world. Please enjoy it. Be more present with your kids. And I look forward to seeing and being able to interact with more parents, more business owners, more people that want to just be able to empower themselves to be the best version of themselves, right? So thank you guys so much. I hope that you have a great rest of your day and take care.